Let's do it to it. So my name is Angie Rupert. I'm the founder of Rupert Law. We handle exclusively E-2 and E-1 visas. So no matter what treaty country you're from or where you want to be, we can help. As you guys know, those of you who watch our videos know that that line very well. Anyway, today I wanted to talk a little bit about what it means or how is it getting an E-2 in 2025, right? You may not know, but we have a new president. Just kidding. I'm sure you all are very aware of that, right? So the United States has a new president, a new old president. We've also had him for 4 years. And in his first term, I will say he was very E-2 friendly. He's not super immigration friendly, but he's very E-2 friendly, right? So we had a lot of positive change in the E-2 in his last term. Now, so far in this term, he's really targeting people, a lot of people who are here illegally, people who have been here for years. Whether that's right or wrong, I guess that's up for debate, but it's not really about the E-2. Now, we have seen one change in the E-2. We have seen one significant negative change in the E-2 through USCIS. So far, knock on wood, we haven't seen those changes in the consulates and embassies around the world, which is where most people apply for the E-2 visa. But within the United States, the new rule that started in February, late February, early March, is that people who apply through USCIS to change status to an E-2 or extend status to an E-2, if they are ultimately denied and their I-94 is expired, they could be sent to court to be deported. Not great news, right? Now, what is the likelihood that you would be denied? Probably not super high. And if you apply in enough time that your I-94 is still valid at the end of when the decision comes through, then there's no harm, no foul. You have no issue, right? So this is a very kind of niche, small group that is negative. But now, so that was the bad news, right? So if your I-94 expires before you get a decision, you get a denial, and you're still here with the I-94 is expired, it could not be great. Although the rumor among immigration attorneys is that they really have not implemented that, but that is the rule, okay? But now the good news. So for those of you who are applying for E-2 visas at consulates and embassies around the world, at this point, there really hasn't been a change, right? We've had approvals throughout the world throughout 2025. And in fact, we've had probably more applicants and maybe more approvals in the last 5 months than the 5 months prior, right? So that's possible. I don't know that for sure, but it kind of feels like that. We've had a lot of approvals so far this year, which we're very excited about. But that said, so the E-2 visa is still around. It's still available. And as far as the consulates and embassies are concerned, it's still generally the same approval rate that we have seen. Now, we know that things change all the time, but so far that's what's going on. So if you are planning on applying at your consulate or embassy, it's 2024 in the world of E-2 visas, if that makes sense. So with that, I don't have any questions yet. Nobody has any questions, which is fine. We'll just talk about the E-2 visa if you guys want to talk about that. Now, on our YouTube channel, you guys know that we have a lot of different videos regarding different types of industries, right? And a lot of the more popular industries are there. So check that out. If you know for sure what type of business you want to buy or start, there might be a video about your specific type of business or industry. So keep that in mind. One question that we get a lot is, and there's actually a video about franchises, but is a franchise more approvable than a different type of business? And the answer is no, but it's also not less approvable. It's very possible. So if you're still debating about the type of business you want to buy or start, a franchise is possible, but also possible are just starting your own business or buying an existing business, buying the assets of an existing business. Right? So any of those can work. You don't have to pick something super specific when it comes to the type of business. Obviously, it must be legal on a federal level. So all of you who want to open your marijuana businesses are not eligible to do that. But if you are ready to open any business that's legal, and as long as you have a tax designation as for profit, right? You're not a nonprofit tax designation and it's legal. Generally, it can work. You just got to show the revenues. You've got to show that you're going to hire employees, that type of thing. Okay. So, yes, a franchise can work very well. But also buying your own, the assets of an existing business, starting your own business, those all work really well. So, let's see. Oh, Arthur, how are you? Thanks so much for joining. Needing to hire employees. Are contractors okay or must be W-2? We always recommend that you have at least one W-2 employee at the time of application. And at the end of 5 years, you should have about 5 W-2 employees. That's our general recommendation. Contractors are generally okay, but we do like W-2 employees more. In fact, I was having a discussion with an attorney this morning, the attorney Sabina. If any of you have dealt with Sabina, she's wonderful, and she's a very experienced E-2 attorney who works here. She was just speaking about in her past work with E-2s, getting denials for renewals that had only contractors and no employees. Now, that's not a hard and fast rule, but that's just anecdotal evidence. So we normally request that you have at least one W-2 employee on payroll at the time of application, and you should want to have about 5 W-2 employees at the end of 5 years or so. Those are kind of our general recommendations. Okay. Hopefully that helps, Arthur. Hey, May. Thanks, May. Great to see you. If it's a gift, do we need to put the money into my account and buy the business, or can he buy his account and put it into the business in my name? So the source of funds is usually one of the trickier parts, right? And that's, I guess, good news, bad news. The source of funds is one of the very first steps that we have in this process, right? Because it's a little tricky. First of all, everybody gets their money in a different way. Second of all, some people get their money in multiple ways, right? Some people get a family gift, they sell a house, and they have personal savings from their job. Or, oh my gosh, we've had so many source of funds. As far as sources of funds, what can be a source of fund? Anything that's legal and traceable, right? So just kind of for your future reference. But the source of funds is tricky. I really wouldn't want to give a lot of information about that here, not because I don't want to give the information, but because each case is so fact dependent and fact specific. But I will say that any source of funds that is legal and traceable, so we can kind of trace it back to its origins, is okay. We've had them all. We've kind of run the gamut, right, of that. And all it should be personal investment, right? So if person A is the person buying the business, it should come from person A's personal account. If eventually, right? It comes from other people's accounts to person A's accounts to the US business account, and then from there. That's the general way that those work. But source of funds is very, very fact specific, fact dependent. So if you have really specific questions about your source of funds and how to move it and when to move it and all of that, we would need to speak with you individually. But that's kind of the gist. Do tariffs affect the type of businesses that are considered for the E-2 visa? Great question. So far, we don't really know the answer to that. Okay. We don't really know because the tariffs are new, not happening, moving all over the board, all over, right? So it's very difficult for any of us to really track and trace what's happening. We have some current clients who have not had an interview yet, but do have some tariff specific issues. So we'll probably know more in a month or two as far as how the tariffs affect the E-2 visa. However, something to keep in mind, tariffs and that type of thing really don't have anything to do with the requirements of the E-2 visa, other than to say it's going to affect your pricing, right? So that's something to keep in mind for your business plan and also for yourself. That's not really an immigration issue, but if you were importing your goods for $2 an item and selling them for $4 an item, and now they're $3.50 an item, your prices are going to need to change, right? So a lot of that's going to come out in the business plan and in your planning. But the tariffs don't specifically have anything to do with the specific E-2 visa requirements, other than to say you got to make sure that your business plan, for your own sake, right? Not even for immigration's sake, but for your own sake, that your business plan makes sense if you're going to be importing goods. Okay. Ernesto, can I apply to start a certain type of business and later on change the business to a totally different type? Not really. Now, usually what happens if you apply for business A, right? And business A they make curtains. Business A makes curtains and you run that for 2 years. And then after 2 years, you're like, oh, I'm so sick of curtains. I really don't want to do that. I want to do dog walking. That's probably something that the consulate would consider a substantive change. And anytime you have a substantive change, you do have to contact the consulate, let them know generally the facts of the case, and get their response. Do you need extra documentation? Are we okay to do this? What other information do you need? And the consulate will let you know at that time. Okay. So that's generally what happens. But you can't just kind of willy nilly do things. Also, keep in mind that you're going to apply for this E-2 under whatever, ABC LLC, right? That's the name of your business, ABC LLC, and we do whatever. It doesn't even matter what you do at this point. But on your visa, you're going to have printed the name of your business. It's going to be printed on there, ABC LLC. So when you go back to renewal, if you have another business that's not printed on your visa and you're getting paid, that's going to be a major issue. Okay. So for the E-2 applicant, you must always be working as long as you have the E-2, right? If you move back to your home country and do whatever you want, but you must always be working only for the business printed on your visa. So that's really, really critical. Okay. Sarah, how much on average should we spend at the time we go to the embassy? $100,000 minimum, depends on the business, right? So the amount of the investment depends on the business. So the most simple business that you could imagine, something like an accounting firm in Montana, right? It's one of the cheapest states. It's an accounting firm. What really do you need? We still recommend $100,000 spent at the time of application because money in a bank account does not count toward the investment, right? If you move $100,000 to a US bank account, you spend 20 and you go to the interview, your investment is $20,000. It is not 100. So keep that in mind. But back to your original question, how much do you need to spend? So on the other end, what if you buy a business it already exists and the cost of the business is $1 million? You're probably going to need to invest $750,000, $800,000 in order to get an E-2. So it really depends on the cost of the business. But in no case, even the most simple, cheapest business you can imagine, we never recommend spending less than $100,000. That's just our recommendation. We feel that that's the safest and the easiest to approve. Now, can you spend less? Of course, you could always spend $20,000 and roll the dice, but our recommendation is always 100 because we feel like you have a better odds of approval at that level. So that's what we always say. Okay. Nicole, what is the most important thing to keep in mind when approaching a renewal timeline for renewal? What is your E-2 approval percentage? If we only have independent contractors, is that a problem? So there's a lot of questions there. Important thing to keep in mind at renewal. Oh, really? Two things, employees and revenues. That's what they're looking for. Employees and revenues, employees and revenues. That's mostly it. Now, if there are significant changes in ownership or whatever, that's something else. But you've got to focus on employees and revenues. You need to have employees. You should. It's going to make your application so much more approvable. And having them on for more than, so here's the deal. Let's say today's May 20th. Let's say that you're going to apply on June 1st, right, for a renewal. And you're like, okay, well, we don't really have that many employees. Let's get somebody on right now and we'll make their pay period only a week. So when we apply, we've got 3 employees on payroll, whatever. And here's the payroll from now May 27th, and we're going to apply on June 1st. Not great, because one of the renewal documents is going to be your W-2s from last year. And they're going to see that you just hired someone. They can see right through that, right? So if you're more than a year away, which Nicole, I know you are because you contacted us this week, you got to get somebody on now and you got to keep them, right? That's the best way to ensure that you're going to be successful at a renewal. Employees are crucial. Even if they're part-time, but the more the merrier. You got to pay them something legitimate. Now, if they're, you've got to pay them over minimum wage, of course, that type of thing. You don't have to pay them hundreds of thousands of dollars, but you really do. Now, another key point is, where are you renewing, or when are you renewing, right? So usually the language of FAM, which is the Field Adjusters Manual, this is what the consulates and embassies review when they're adjudicating E-2 visas. Their mandate, or the rule there, is after 5 years. So some people have to renew every 2 years, some people renew every 3 years, some people renew every 4 years, some people renew every 5 years. It depends on where your passport's from. But we still always recommend you have the most revenues and the most employees you possibly can. Now, does that mean you need 20 employees if your business makes $250,000 a year? No, that doesn't even make sense. You should have the most that you can. I know that's not a great answer, because what does that mean? Again, very case specific. But at the end of 5 years, that's when they really want to see all of that stuff. So if you're renewing and it's only been 2 years or 3 years, you can kind of explain that, but you should still have as many W-2 employees as you can, right? Hopefully that answered that. A visa renewal appointments waived, it really depends on where you're from. Some countries don't allow visa waivers. Also, that is a change this year, that some waivers are allowed, or interview waivers are allowed, but fewer than before. So it really depends on the renewal dates and a variety of different things. In Canada, sometimes the renewal process is like worse than the original because they take longer sometimes. So it really depends on where you're from. Some countries don't allow interview waivers. Some people have recently changed the interview waiver. So the interview waiver it really doesn't speak to the strength of the case. It speaks more to the renewal date and the consulate itself. So I wouldn't say, oh, just because your interview is waived, your case is stronger or weaker than someone else. A lot of times it's just the process of that specific consulate. Okay. Can my wife be an E-2 SRS? Can my wife be an E-2 and I have an open work permit? We live in Canada. Can she do it by living in Canada, visit the business sometimes once a month from Canada? Not really. We always recommend, so keep in mind that the E-2 visa is for people who direct and develop their U.S. business. What does that mean? I don't really know. Actually, that's the requirement. You must be directing and developing your business. So here's the risk you run if you're living in Canada, or any country for that matter, and only coming in for maybe 3 or 4 days a month. You might be able to do that for a year, 2 years. Who knows? But at some point, you're going to run into somebody at the airport that goes, I think you're supposed to be running a business here. You've been here 7 days in the last 3 months. How are you running a business in the US if you've only been here 7 days in the last 3 months? I don't think you're using your E-2 correctly. You were denied entry. That's the risk you run. Okay. So we always recommend that our clients are in the US a minimum of 6 to 7 months a year. That doesn't have to be all at once, but of course that depends a lot on where your visa is from, right? So some visas don't have international travel privileges. But in this case, Canada, we would always recommend that you're here at least 6 to 7 months out of every year when you have the E-2 as the E-2 applicant. Now, as the spouse of the E-2 or a child of an E-2 or whatever, do whatever you want. Come here once a year for a week. Who cares? Doesn't really matter. They're not caring about you. They care about the applicant. And the applicant should be running this business. The applicant's sole career focus should be the US business. Doesn't mean you can't have other businesses or whatever, but it's got to be the main focus is the US business, and you need to treat it as such, meaning you need to be in the US 6 to 7 months a year. Again, that doesn't mean from January 1 to July 1. That means you're here 4 weeks, you're in Canada 3 weeks. You're here 6 weeks, you're in Canada 2.5 weeks. You're here 4 weeks, you're in Canada 4 weeks. You can come back and forth and whatever, but 6 to 7 months present in the United States. That is what we recommend. Sandro for renewal. Oh, good numbers. Every country renewal documentation is different, but you should plan on, like for instance, the UK, they want all your tax documents since the day you applied, right? Canada wants 2 years, 3 years, something like that. So it really depends on where you're from, how many tax documents, and that type of thing you're going to need to supply. So just kind of keep that in mind. Tatiana, should we expect longer processing times or higher denial rates under USCIS? Longer processing times if you don't premium process 100%, although we don't not premium process anymore. So that's, if you were to hire us, that is not an option for you. You must premium process through USCIS for the reasons I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, right? We want your answer ASAP. We need it before your I-94 expires. But if you don't premium process, yes, longer wait times. Higher denial rates, too early to tell, but so far I don't think so. I don't think so. Jeffrey. Hi, Jeffrey from the UK. I can apply. Hold on just a second here. I can apply for the E-2 from outside the UK and a consulate with yet less. No, the UK is really tough. Okay, so the UK has a very specific visa with the United States that no other country has, or I'm sorry, specific treaty with the United States that no other country on earth has, and that is to say you must be living and residing in the British Isles at the time of your application. And so as a UK citizen, you're going to have to go through the UK, and you are correct. London is taking forever right now. Now, I can't blame Donald Trump on that, or I can't blame that on Donald Trump. I'd love to, but I can't. They've been doing that since last year. London has changed their process quite a bit, and it has resulted in longer wait times. So that's that. Jujar, I think we talked. How many employees for a new E-2 application? At least one. DV, can I purchase a studio for my investment? Educational. We never usually recommend purchasing any sort of real estate as part of the investment for a few different reasons. But the main reason is it's super expensive. And a lot of times that's an expense that is way above and beyond. But if the question is, can I purchase a studio? And I guess you mean a studio like a commercial space, not like a studio apartment, but like a commercial space. The answer is, can you purchase that and then get an E-2 visa? And the answer is no, because you need a well-rounded investment, right? So it's not just about the amount, it's also about what types of things are you investing in? I had a client one time years ago who said, I said, okay, you're going to need to invest $100,000, whatever. And he was having trouble kind of coming up with how he was going to do it. And he goes, oh, called me the next time. Great news. I just bought a Tesla. It was $125,000. Are we ready to apply? And I'm like, no. First of all, that has nothing to do with your business. But second of all, you need to start a business. You can't just own one asset, right? So if your plan is, hey, I want to buy this commercial studio space and I'm going to have all of the equipment in it, and I'm going to be hiring an accountant, and I'm going to have a website built, and I'm going to be buying a lot of different equipment and furnishings and fixtures and inventory and whatever, then yes. But if your plan is, hey, I'm going to buy the studio space, then let's apply. No, because you need a well-rounded investment. You need to be owning a business in the US, not an asset, if that makes any sense. Okay, Hugo, I've been extending my E-2 visa for the last 12 years, but I haven't had a visa since 2012. Been asked to get a visa by an officer. Oh, okay. So I guess you've just been here on status or something like that. I don't know where you ran into an officer, maybe at the border. If you've been in Mexico or Canada for less than 30 days, something like that. If you have always applied at USCIS, then that is a renewal. If you have always applied at the consulate, so you either apply at USCIS or at the consulate or embassy, right? And wherever, if you've always applied in one, then when you apply in the other, it's a brand new application because they've never seen it. Now, if you originally applied at one and then for 12 years been applying at the other, and now you're going back, you should probably treat it. That's a really tricky question. I guess it really depends on how different it is from the last time they saw it, but you should probably kind of treat it like new because it's been so long, they may not even have records of it. So hopefully that helps. Kirsty, yeah, we're going to talk next week. That's awesome. Great to see you here. Thanks so much. Okay, Sophie Green, we apply for an E-2 after 1.5 years receiving the citizenship from a treaty country. Oh, so the answer is it depends on how you got the citizenship and where the citizenship is. So if you got the citizenship through investment, then yes, you must reside in that country for 3 years. If you got it some other way, then there's no time limit at all. You could get a citizenship. You get your passport today and apply for an E-2 visa tomorrow. But if it is through investment, you have to reside in that country for 3 years and prove it. Oh, Jack Beaumont. I'm from Canada. Can I come to the US as a visitor, start a business, and apply for an E-2? Yes, you can, but don't. It's not a good idea. We never recommend changing status for Canadians, in particular in the US. One of the reasons is what I said at the very top of this video, that if for some reason you're denied and your I-94 has expired, you could be deported. That's new, but that's only through USCIS, right? Also, USCIS is only good for 2 years. They're really, really particular about the source of funds. Also, there's no international travel whatsoever. If you go to the consulate in Toronto, generally, if you're approved, you're going to be approved for 5 years. International travel is fine. It's just a much better way to go about it. That's my own opinion, and that's what I recommend for all of my clients, particularly Canadians, because you have so much travel ability, and if you apply through USCIS, you lose that. So it's no good. Alexander's. Does my company automatically have the E-2 since it was initially approved? Absolutely not. Nothing is automatic in the world of immigration. You have to reapply for everything, and people can be denied. You can get denied on renewal. That can happen. It certainly can. Okay, it looks like we've run out of questions, which is good because we've been here for 26 minutes. So I'm going to wrap today. However, if you have any other questions, please reach out. We could schedule a consultation and talk specifically about the issues in your E-2 visa case. As you have probably seen, there are a lot of facts, right? So really, really depends a lot on the facts of the case. So we'd love to talk to you about the very specific facts. And I know some people I know are everything's got skipped. I realize, but we're running out of time. We tried to get to all of them. I know there's a lot. So please reach out. We can schedule something, and then we can talk more specifically about the specific facts of your case. Happy to do it. Hopefully, I hear from all of you. It would be great to speak with you. So thanks so much, everybody. We'll have another one of these soon. Join us then. Love to speak with you. Thanks. Have a great day.